Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all you magnificent melon heads of the world. Happy Monday, everybody. Today is November 25th, 2024, and the new week is upon us, and we are off and running this week with some big news. Came out over the weekend. Scott Bessent, he's a hedge fund manager, and he has been chosen as the new Secretary of the Treasury. He's going to be replacing Aunt Janet. And, well, we're all going to miss Aunt Janet on this show, aren't we? Where it's, well, Janet, we wish you good luck in your retirement. Have fun collecting on those speaking fees that we know you've arranged in advance in exchange for services rendered, I'm sure. So she's out. Scott Bessent will be coming in along with Donald Trump. Now, the market right now is kind of celebrating. I am not celebrating Scott Bessent being chosen as Treasury Secretary. I know there's a lot of people out there like, oh, he's a hedge fund guy. He's one of us. He's so skilled and he's done all these wonderful things. Yeah, Scott Bessent has done very well for Scott Bessent. And Scott Bessent has done very well for George Soros also. Yeah, well, that Republican icon, George Soros, Scott Bessent has done really well by him. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, he just up and decides he's a Republican now. Magic like that. And, well, let's talk a little bit about Bessent. All right. First of all, he really is a big-time foreign exchange guy. Scott Bessent made a name for himself. He was one of the principal architects of George Soros's famous short against the British pound back in the, the early 90s, I think is when he did that. And George Soros shorted the hell out of the pound and absolutely crushed the UK economy with that short. All the things that the UK did to try to defend the pound against George Soros' short and the fallout from all of that and the unemployment it caused and the social unrest it caused. I'm not a big fan of what Mr. Soros did to the UK economy, and I'm not a big fan of what Scott Bessent helped him do. Now, Scott Bessent also had a very successful short bet against the Japanese yen a few years later. So you can kind of see, again, this was when he was working for Soros, but you can kind of see how foreign exchange is a big hallmark of this guy's career. And, well, we've got an inflation problem here in the States that is not totally vanquished. It may be on its way out very slowly, but it's still higher than the Fed's goal. So we do have an inflation problem. We've also got this global BRICS movement to dethrone the dollar as the world reserve currency. So, I mean, I can see what Trump's logic is here. He's bringing Bessent in to defend the dollar as the reserve currency. Now, Bessent has this 3-3-3 plan, which is basically based on Shinzo Abe's 3 arrows plan over in Japan. Now, Abe's 3 arrows policy is basically become known as Abenomics. In other words, the most grotesque, dovish monetary policy imaginable. And here on this channel, having lived through inflation and dollar debasement and everything, I don't think modeling our treasury after the most dovish monetary policy in history and fiscal policy was also very dovish over in Japan under Shinzo Abe. I don't think that's a good thing. All right. And this is kind of one of the things that I warned about. And again, guys, like I'm not an anti-Trumper. I don't suffer from TDS. I voted for Trump because I didn't want to vote for Kamina. But at the same time, Trump is a stock market go up, number go up at all costs kind of guy. He behaved that way in his first term. And I think he'll do that in his second term. And his pick of Bessent tells me that he's going to do everything he can to keep this asset bubble inflating. All right. And this 3 arrows or this new 3-3-3 policy that Bessent has, it's just, we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into the article, but I think it's a little bit too much hopium there. I don't really think it's going to work out the way they think it's going to work out. And really what this tells me is that they're going to be dovish, that they're going to keep up the gimmicks that Yellen has been doing to manipulate the yield curve and to manipulate interest rates. And look at the reaction. We've got stocks are way up this morning on no other news. And interest rates are down, the dollar is falling, all pretty much lines up with this dovish policy that Bessent is probably going to bring with him. Now, also going on this morning, we've got an early hint at what Trump's energy policy might look like. No big surprises there. They're preparing a series of executive orders for the first few days in office, the hallmark of which will include ditching President Biden's pause or ban on the approval of new LNG export terminal licenses. So that is probably good for American business to see that. And of course, other policies which basically amount to drill, baby, drill, more permits on federal lands, offshore drilling. So we can already see the energy-friendly policy developing for the Trump administration. On top of that, contrast that, if you will, with what's going on in Germany this morning. ThyssenKrupp, which is a German steelmaker, big German industrial powerhouse. They announced that they are cutting 11,000 jobs through the end of this decade because their steel business has been losing money for years now. The deindustrialization of Germany is continuing here. We've seen it with car factories being shut down for the first time since freaking World War II were going on in that country. Now the steel makers are shutting down. Why? I don't know, maybe because Europe as a whole outsourced their energy and industrial policy to a freaking teenager with a sailboat. And in a shocking turn of events, there are consequences to that for the 11,000 people who used to work for ThyssenKrupp. Well, Greta, congratulations. You just destroyed the lives of 11,000 families. You must be very proud of yourself. How dare you? So got that going on in Germany this morning. Macy's. Accounting irregularities going on at Macy's. That's interesting. I mean, Macy's, first of all, they're still a thing. Okay, I thought Macy's went away years ago. This is a company that's basically been dying for several decades now. It's kept alive because I think there's a lot of private equity firms out there that look at it and say, well, it's worth a little bit for parts. They own land and, they've got a lot of mall space, and then the value of commercial real estate fell. So all the plans to buy the company and sell off the real estate went away. So Macy's is still just kind of like, humming along here, losing money. Well, they announced that they're delaying their earnings filing because of accounting irregularities associated with specifically one employee. It's very interesting. Oh, it's just one guy did it. Definitely not anything involving our C-suite. Certainly nobody told them to do that. One guy has been underreporting their shipping expenses, hiding about $150 million worth of small package shipping costs. So Macy's is not reporting their earnings, delaying all that good stuff. And speaking of accounting irregularities, Supermicro is up big again this morning, up over or almost 100% since they announced BDO as their auditor. Guys, accounting irregularities is not a buy the dip opportunity. I'm just throwing that out there. Okay, the number went up. Congratulations. You made money on this. You bought a company that's at risk of being delisted with a history of fraud, that's doing fraud again, and you bought them. Why? Not because they were cleared of any wrongdoing, not because they're not going to be delisted, not because they did release their 10K, not because their auditor approved their books. No, you bought them up almost 100% because they hired a new auditor. That's all they did. The auditor hasn't cleared anything. Nobody has stamped, signed, or approved anything. They just hired an auditor, and now they're into their grace period after the grace period after the grace period before they get delisted. Again, accounting irregularities, not a buy the dip opportunity. And last but not least, we got another one. This is a sector I don't usually cover, biotech. We've got Cassava Sciences stock is halted this morning. They announced that their phase 3 trials of their Alzheimer's drug did not go well. The stock is down 84% on this news. And, guys, I get a lot of emails. I get a lot of messages about biotech stocks. People, hey, have you looked at this one? I hear this drug is doing this, and I looked at this one. I almost never cover this sector, and this is exactly why I never cover this sector, because it's the Wild West. There is so much fraud. Basically, everything hinges on this one story going right, and if that happens, you hit big, but in most cases, you end up getting wiped out. It's a lot like the junior mining space in that regard. And so we're going to talk about this one this morning, not so much because I think it's really big news, but this is what usually happens in this space. And it's one of the reasons why I don't cover these topics, even though I keep getting people emailing me about drug companies. I hate the entire space overall. And so with that, why don't we shrink my big melon of a head and let's see what's going on in markets this morning. Don't forget that like button for the algorithm. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button as well, because we do this every morning. So you can have your coffee with the melon heads as we go through markets. The S&P 500 is up 43 points right now, 0.75% higher. You can see it's been grinding higher all morning, and then around 8:30, we took a little bit of a step change higher. The market is liking Scott Bessent because he's a dove, and he's going to further inflate the asset bubble. The Dow is doing the same thing, up 385 points, 0.87% higher this morning, and the NASDAQ is also higher by 0.84%. 175 points to the upside for the NASDAQ. So all three indexes are up. And look at the dollar. It's taken a dive this morning, down 92 basis points. back below 107 at 106.64. Higher stocks, weaker dollar. All right. Guys, this is why I said it doesn't really matter who wins the election. Yes, it'll smell different. There are some things you're going to like versus, maybe some social things you didn't like. You like the drill, baby, drill. But when it comes to dollar debasement and the inflation of the bubble, Trump just no different than Kamina. And look at the way the dollar is reacting right here. Does this look like the easy money is going away? No, it does not. And look at the bond market as well. We've got interest rates on the long end of the yield curve sharply lower this morning on that news about Scott Bessent. The 30-year Treasury is at 4.5, down 9.5 basis points here, 4.500. The 10-year, 4.310. That's down 10 basis points. The 2-year, 4.313, down 5.5 points. Guys, the 10-year has flipped the 2-year lower. The yield curve is re-inverting here. Look at that. That just happened. The 10, it's only 1,000th of a point, but it's way down here. We've got the yield curve re-inverting, at least momentarily. Meanwhile, the 1 month at 4.614, essentially unchanged here. Looking over at the commodities board, this is kind of interesting to see. We've got a weaker dollar. We've got lower interest rates, and yet gold is getting clobbered here. All right, so I guess in a risk-off perspective, this makes sense. People are buying stocks. Gold is a safe haven asset. And so in risk-off, you would sell gold and buy stocks, or at least that's what risk-off people would do. I wouldn't do that. But still, it's strange to see gold doing so poorly with this lower dollar and lower interest rates here, because gold competes with interest rates for yield, where gold yields nothing. Higher yield means people typically sell gold. But again, it's maybe just a technical bounce. Gold rocketed higher last week. It was up pretty much every day. But right now it's down $52, almost 2% lower, 2,660 for spot gold. Spot silver not faring any better, $30.51. That's down almost 80 cents, 2.53% lower. Dr. Copper's up by about 0.9% this morning. Platinum's down 2%. Palladium is down 2.5%. WTI crude oil is down 2.2% at $69.68, back below $70. And let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin here. Bitcoin at $97,600. It didn't do much this week, and it actually traded sharply lower for a little while yesterday. We went as low yesterday as 95,780 as priced on Coinbase. Bitcoin consolidating for a couple of days here. It's probably going to take a while to break through 100,000, assuming it does break through 100,000 here. I'd imagine we're going to trade at this level for a couple of days. Now, while that was going on, we talked a lot about MicroStrategy in the Friday afternoon show. They were busy all last week. This one from Walter Bloomberg on Twitter. MicroStrategy invests $5.4 billion for 55,500 more Bitcoin. That's between November 18th and 24th. So this was last week up to and including the weekend. They bought another 55,500 Bitcoin at an average price of $97,862. So Saylor continues to pile in, providing a little bit of support for those prices that might otherwise have gone sharply lower over the weekend. All right, now let's talk about our main guy here. There he is. Scott Bessent sees a coming global economic reordering, and he wants to be part of it. There is Scott Bessent. He's going to be our new Janet Yellen, the new Secretary of the Treasury, basically the CFO of the country. This is a very important appointment. Scott Bessent spent the past 40 years studying economic history. Now, as Donald Trump's choice to lead the Treasury Department, he has the chance to make his mark on it. As a hedge fund manager, first at George Soros's firm and later at his own, Bessent specialized in macro investing or analyzing geopolitical situations and economic data to wager on big picture market moves. He generated billions of dollars in profit betting on and against currencies, interest rates, stocks, and other asset classes around the world. He was motivated to step out from behind the desk and get involved with Trump's campaign, in part because of a view that the time was running out for the U.S. economy to grow its way out of excessive budget deficits and indebtedness. And right there, you can already see the stupidity, the idea that the U.S. can grow its way out of budget deficits and debt. You're kidding, right? That this Keynesian idea that, don't worry, if we just keep printing and spending, we'll grow our way out of it. It hasn't worked. It's only gotten worse since we've started this stupidity. Scott Bessent is going to continue it We need to cut spending, and not by a little. We need to cut it a lot, all right? It's not time for a scalpel. It's time for the freaking guillotine when it comes to spending. Now, let's scroll down a little bit through a lot of the political nonsense. He has advised Trump to pursue a policy that he calls 333, inspired by former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who revitalized the Japanese economy in the 2010s with his three-arrow economic policy. Shinzo Abe did not revitalize anything. Abenomics was a dovish Keynesian freaking nightmare. It's resulted in several lost decades for Japan. Japan now has high inflation, no growth. The Japanese currency is just absolutely being decimated. We've got the unwind of the yen carry trade to look forward to. And our new Treasury Secretary is modeling his policy framework after that. So I'm not very excited about this guy. I'm not even a little bit. Now, Bessent's three arrows includes cutting the budget deficit to 3% of GDP by 2028. Okay, so the current deficit is about 7% of GDP. So he wants to cut that down to 3. I'm a big fan of cutting it down to 0, but all right, let's live in the real world. 3%. Maybe that's a little bit more of an achievable target by 2028. Again, that strikes me as too little too late. But he also says that this will spur GDP growth of 3% through deregulation. That's just a pipe dream. There's no way we're going to cut the deficit down to 3% and then somehow achieve 3% GDP growth, because just cutting the deficit down to 3% is going to subtract 4% from GDP. So where is this magic 7% of GDP going to come from if we cut the deficit down to 3%, and then somehow we end up with positive 3% growth? This is just a pipe dream. This is not real policy here. It's just a bunch of talking points and a gimmicky 333 sales pitch. And then the last thing he's saying is he wants to produce an additional 3 million barrels of oil a day. Now, again, great. It sounds good. I'm all for domestic oil production, but let's face facts. Oil prices are kind of hovering in the high 60s, low 70s right now. Pretty low level relative to where they've been for the last few years. Only a couple of bucks above the level where U.S. producers are profitable. And right now, the Saudis are looking at increasing production pretty soon by a few 100,000 barrels per day. There is no way the United States can produce another 3 million barrels per day of oil without crashing oil prices. And of course, the Saudis may have something to say about that. So the Saudis, long before we get to an additional 3 million barrels a day, the Saudis will open the floodgates and crash oil prices like they did in the 2010s to put American producers out of business. So the only way they can possibly produce an additional 3 million barrels of oil per day will be to dramatically lower interest rates all the way down to 0, maybe even negative, so that American oil producers can stay alive with those lower oil prices, because they'll be losing money at that level. So they'll be tapping into the bond market to sustain cash burning operations, i.e. more zombie companies. And if we lower interest rates that low, that's going to be very inflationary. That's going to lead to more dovish monetary policy, more currency debasement. Guys, this is not grounded in reality, right? I'm a big fan of deregulation, and deregulation will help, but deregulation is not this magic snake oil elixir where if you just down a bottle of it, all of a sudden economic reality disappears and all this fairy dust sprinkles from heaven, and you can balance the budget, grow the economy, and produce all this oil magnificently. It doesn't work that way, guys. Everything has an equal and opposite reaction in economics. And I don't think this guy's policy is grounded in reality. When I see all of this stuff, all I really see is keep the easy money flowing. That's the takeaway on Scott Bessent. And that's why I'm just not that optimistic about what this guy is going to do for the economy. Again, is it better than Janet Yellen? Maybe, but let's be honest, guys. I mean, pick some random idiot off the street would probably be better than Janet Yellen. I don't think this guy's going to make things better. All right. And, the fact that he worked for George Soros for his entire career, he was a big fundraiser for Al Gore, and then he worked on the Obama campaign. And then all of a sudden in 2015, this guy up and decides he's a Republican now. Call me crazy for doubting that just a little bit. All right. But on top of that, speaking of some of the deregulation, we do have a little bit of an idea what the energy policy is going to look like. And they are already working on that plus 3 million barrels per day. Again, though, the Saudis may have a little something to say about that. Exclusive in Reuters, Trump prepares wide-ranging energy plan to boost gas exports, oil drilling, according to sources, anonymously sourced, of course. Donald Trump's transition team is putting together a wide-ranging energy package to roll out within days of his taking office that would approve export permits for new liquefied natural gas projects and increase oil drilling off the U.S. coast and on federal lands, according to two sources familiar with the plan. An early priority would be lifting President Joe Biden's election year pause on new export permits for LNG and moving swiftly to approve pending permits, the sources said. Trump would also look to expedite drilling permits on federal lands and quickly reopen 5-year drilling plans off the U.S. coast to include more lease sales, the sources said. So more LNG exports and drill, baby, drill. Now, the LNG export permits, guys, it takes over a decade to build an LNG export terminal. So I don't think that's really going to result in any material change in the energy picture, at least not right away. It may help put more holes in the ground. It could help in the Northeast where the fracking boom is trying to make a comeback. The fact that the LNG permits are going to start happening again. So maybe several years from now, there will be more demand to liquefy and export natural gas. So you got companies like Cheniere Energy are up about 0.5% this morning, ticker LNG. This is the company that runs that big export facility called Sabine Pass in Louisiana. They're trading at $223. So energy-friendly policy coming from the Trump people in their campaign, part of that 333 plan from Bessent. You can already see it starting to take shape. But again, we'll see what OPEC does. We'll see what they do because OPEC can produce the oil cheaper than our guys can. So they may decide that they're going to flood the market with supply to try to put U.S. producers out of business like they did in the 2010s. Now, contrast U.S. energy policy with what's going on overseas. And you can see this is a warning to the states. Hey, don't indulge in this Greta Thunberg lunacy. You've got ThyssenKrupp proposes 11,000 job cuts at the struggling steel unit. The deindustrialization in Europe continues. ThyssenKrupp's steel unit plans to eliminate or outsource 11,000 jobs this decade, a move that would shrink a business that's lost billions of euros to a global steel glut and rising energy prices. The steel division's board has proposed cutting 5,000 jobs while moving another 6,000 positions to external service providers, i.e. outsourcing. The company aims to lower personnel costs by about 10% on average over the coming years. The company, which employs around 27,000 people, is currently in talks with Czech billionaire David Kretinsky's EP Corporate Group about the investment group increasing its shares in the steelmaker to 50% from 20%. ThyssenKrupp's steel unit has repeatedly failed to break even due to high investment requirements and low steel prices weighing on the company's overall ratings. High energy prices stemming from Russia's invasion of Ukraine and rising interest rates have also increased costs for the division. No mention of the fact that the Greens have been in charge in Germany and they basically put an idiot child in charge of their energy policy. And, you know, factories all over the country have been shutting down because of that. Oh, no, it was Putin and Ukraine. That's why the energy is so expensive in Germany. Oh, have also proved a stumbling block in talks with potential buyers. So 11,000 jobs going away in Germany. ThyssenKrupp stock not really moving this morning here, basically unchanged. I'm not sure if the time difference is playing a role here. You'd think this would be moving the stock one way or another. But again, a warning, guys, you know, energy policy has consequences. Also going on this morning, Macy's is having some accounting irregularities. Macy's says quarterly sales dropped, but delayed full earnings release due to an accounting issue. Macy's on Monday posted preliminary third quarter results and said it would delay its full earnings release as it completes an investigation of an accounting issue. The company was slated to report its quarterly earnings before the opening bell on Tuesday. In a statement Monday, Macy's said its third quarter sales had fallen 2.4%. Comparable sales for its owned and licensed stores plus its online marketplace dropped 1.3%. That's not good. Macy's did not post earnings figures for the third quarter. The retailer said it expects to release its results along with full quarter and full year guidance by December 11th. Macy's said it found an issue related to delivery expenses in one of its accrual accounts while preparing its quarterly results. After an independent investigation, the company found that one employee who handled small package delivery expense accounting made erroneous entries to hide about $132 million to $154 million in delivery expenses from the fourth quarter of 2021 through this year's fiscal third quarter. The company said it had about $4.36 billion in delivery expenses during that time. So, all right, we've got some accounting irregularities. It's kind of convenient. They're like, don't worry, there's one guy, and he doesn't work for the company anymore. One guy messed up. Certainly management didn't tell him to do this. And now we're letting you guys know Macy's stock down 3.8%, trading at $15.68. That's down, now it's down about 20 cents here. Accounting irregularities. Speaking of those, let's talk about this one. Supermicro stock soars, building on a record week. These risks remain. Guys, this stock has rallied a ridiculous amount on nothing. Supermicro stock was rising again on Monday after the server maker's plans to avoid being delisted from the NASDAQ sparked a record-breaking rally last week. Supermicro stock had its best 5-day stretch on record last week after the company said it had appointed BDO as a new independent auditor and submitted a plan to the NASDAQ to comply with listing requirements. It submitted the plan. The plan was not approved. It hired an auditor. The auditor has not signed off on the books. Shares are still about 72% off the record closing high that they set back in March. The question for investors is what comes next? Risks still loom for Supermicro. BDO will have to rework the company's financials, which could lead to further delays and missed filing deadlines. Supermicro said it should now be able to file its annual 10K for the fiscal year ended June 30th. They didn't say when. And it should be able to file its 10Q for the quarter ended September 30th, but it didn't say when. Its failure to file those forms on time is what put it at risk of being delisted. It is still at risk of being delisted, guys. Nothing has changed. And yet look at what Supermicro stock is doing. It's up another, what is this, 6.3% this morning. Look at what it's done over the last couple of days here. Let's say 1 month. This thing bottomed out at $17.36, and now here it is trading at over 35. And the company is still at risk of being delisted. Guys, accounting irregularities is not a dip buying opportunity. Try explaining that to this market, though. We pay $6 million for bananas duct taped to a wall, and we pay $35 per share for a company that has accounting irregularities. Also going on this morning, check this one out. Cassava Sciences stock halted, down 5% after an Alzheimer's disease trial fails to meet its goals. All right, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I hate this sector, okay? And this is exactly why I hate this sector. And you know, I apologize to you guys who send me biotech stocks to look at, and I'm generally very dismissive of it. It's nothing personal. I just hate this sector for just this reason. We're not going to get into this stock. They were in phase 3, right? They've been selling all this hype. Oh, this Alzheimer's drug. It's going to relieve the suffering of people who are watching their relatives slip away, right? Capitalizing on people's emotions. And then, oh, well, it turns out our drug doesn't work any better than the placebo after years and years of bold talking points. Now look at what the stock did this morning. After falling 17% on Friday, by the way, who got news of this on Friday before this was announced? Because somebody knew and was dumping stock, and it was down almost 18% at the close last week. But look at this morning, down another 84% pre-market. All right, this stock went from $26 to $4 before the opening bell even rang. And this is why I generally avoid the biotech space entirely. Besides the fact that I hate these companies. They gave us the opioid epidemic. They gave us high drug prices. I don't like the entire sector. But besides my personal opinion on the sector, this is what can happen to you, right? And this is why I generally steer clear of junior miners and I steer clear of biotechs, because you are one headline away from an 85% decline in the stock. I mean, this company is toast here. They're done. I mean, if this is a one-trick pony, they've got their Alzheimer's drug and it doesn't work, well, they're out of here. So be careful, guys. That's all. And that's why I almost never talk about this entire sector. But, you know, we got big news on this one on an otherwise slow news day. So we'll talk a little bit about cassava. Be careful in biotechs. And I just want to say thank you so much to Harmon Air LLC, who says best Aunt Janet roast around for what it's worth. Well, thank you so much, Harmon Air LLC. I really appreciate that. And it has been my pleasure to serve as your Treasury Secretary for all of these many years, and I have been happy to serve Wall Street. And now all those side deals that I cut with them, I'm going to go cash in on those by giving speeches to Goldman Sachs for 5 minutes that pays me $25 million, because really what they were paying for was the policy that I put in place while I was running the Treasury. Well, thank you very much, Aunt Janet, for your diligent service to the American people and everything. And once again, don't let the door hit you. Where the good Lord split you. And guys, again, this guy Bessent, everything I've read about this guy's history and his plans, I'd love to be optimistic. I would really love to be optimistic. I'd like to be like, hell yeah, this guy's going to fix everything. Dogs, everything's going to be great. I don't think so. I mean, this guy strikes me very much as a Wall Street insider, a hedge fund guy. The market is celebrating because he's one of theirs, and he's going to do what they want. So thank you very much, Harmon Air LLC, for supporting the channel. And thank you to Wally, who says XRP to the moon and beyond. It will be a major linchpin in the coming financial system. I've heard this story before. I don't follow it that closely, Wally. It will play a big part in tokenization of assets. I don't see it. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big XRP fan. I know the XRP army and what was it, BitBoy Crypto, that guy who I'm pretty sure he's in jail now, or he will be soon. What's the name of it? Dagnammit, we had it the other day. We were talking about this. There is a talk that this new settlement system that's being built in the Middle East may work on the XRP framework. I haven't studied it that close, so I can't weigh in on it. All I can tell you guys is when it comes to crypto, I'm a Bitcoiner, and that's it. I don't dabble. I mean, I mined a little bit of Ethereum a couple of years ago, and I'm still sitting on that. It has done nothing while Bitcoin has mooned. I don't dabble in shit coins, certainly not these meme coins that are going around and all the celebrity e-news. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Some people swear by XRP. I haven't watched it that close, to be honest with you. When it comes to crypto, Bitcoin is enough risk for me. I don't go beyond that. But I wish you luck, Wally, and thank you, sir, for the support of the channel. And thank you so much to M&J, who says, thankful for the best melon patch in the world and wishing you all a wonderful Thanksgiving and blessings to all. What wonderful news, M&J, or what a wonderful sentiment. Thank you for that very much. By the way, M&J, I'm going to embarrass her a little bit. M&J made a very generous donation of a camper to Melody and some of the relief efforts that she was doing to relieve the hurricane, the suffering that's been going on in Tennessee and North Carolina. We will have more to talk about that on DNN. DNN is on a break because everybody's just so dang busy with the travel schedules and the holidays coming up. But we're going to be talking more about that. M&J, you are awesome. You are just an awesome, awesome person all around. It has been my pleasure to get to know you on this channel, and I just think it's amazing what you did and all the things you do. Thank you so much for everything you do for the channel and for keeping everybody in line in the comments. I know, self-included, the melon heads, we can get a little mouthy sometimes. All right. I was a commercial fisherman in a past life, guys. I've got a sailor's mouth. M&J is very much the channel mom, and she keeps us all in line. So thank you, M&J, for everything you do. And on the subject of Thanksgiving, I just want to mention, guys, there will be no morning show or afternoon show on Thursday and Friday this week. We're going to take the day off. Markets are closed on Thanksgiving, and I'm not going to try to overcome the hangover from Thanksgiving dinner and do a morning show on Friday. It's going to be a really slow news day anyway, so we won't be on Thursday or Friday this week. Thanks again, M&J, for the super chat. And thank you to John. Is it Mullet or Mole? Thank you, Mr. John. Business up front, party in the back. He says, could Super Micro be a dollar laundromat, as in laundering money? Entirely plausible. We have seen companies try to use AI hardware as money laundering, right? The hyperscale Nexus story that I did videos about, that was absolutely a money laundering front for a drug cartel. And I've seen a lot of the other people, other people from other companies I've done videos about, do business in sectors that are notorious for money laundering, in parts of the world that are notorious for money laundering, using shell companies that are notorious for money laundering. So I've seen a lot of overlap and a lot of smoke on the laundromat idea. Now, nothing specific about Supermicro that makes me think laundromat. Supermicro, I see more accounting fraud. The way they had those hiding those third party or those related parties like Ablecom and CompuWare, where they could either inflate their sales by artificially lowering cost of goods sold, or they could loot the company by artificially inflating cost of goods sold. Plus, they're big-time sanctions violators. I think that's more likely what's going on at Supermicro versus like money laundering or that kind of criminal activity. But these guys are such epic scumbags. I would not rule out anything, John, whatsoever. Supermicro ends in tears. All these people who are making money on the stock right now, congratulations, you guys made gains. Be careful. Take profits, guys. This company is going down. They're going down hard. And remember, there's also a Department of Justice investigation open on this company right now, not just the SEC, the DOJ, a criminal investigation is going on. So that story ain't over just because they hired BDO. That's for sure. Thank you very much, John, for the super chat and the support of the channel. And thank you, everybody, for having your coffee with the Melonheads this morning. I appreciate that very much. Once again, guys, reminder, no show on Thursday or Friday this week, but I will be back tomorrow, so I'll see you guys then. Thank you, everyone, for the generosity in the super chats, as well as my Patreon supporters on YouTube and Patreon. You guys are awesome. Links down below, should you feel so inclined. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Love you guys. Everybody, till next time, live small and dream big.